Holidays should be a time of celebration.
All right,
not
I gotta.
obligation. That's why we think
the
annual
number?
fees are ridiculous.
Yeah,
And
go
now
ahead.
just for giving us a try,
602?
we're going to give new card
This
members
is
a
not
one-year
hanging up.
anniversary gift they'll never forget. At the end of your first year, we'll match all the cash back you've earned dollar for dollar. No caps and no
why am I
exceptions,
getting no-
because we know if you try
I got
us,
nothing
you'll
coming
like
through
us.
here.
And that's worth every penny.
Is the phone dead?
Try it and believe it at discover.com/match. Cashback match offer only for new card members. Limited
I got nothing, man. That phone is deader than dead.
Stop what you are doing because what I'm about to say will improve the quality of your life. ZYPPAH.com. That's ZPA.
Frustrating.
Spelled backwards. ZPA is designed to be comfortable, affordable, and effective at eliminating snoring. I want to help you stop snoring. Go to ZPA.com and order now. ZYPPAH.com.
Got a dial tone?
Snoring is a serious matter. ZPA will conquer your snoring problem.
Okay.
Go to ZPA.com and order now.
Whether it's for weight loss, blood sugar control, or just overall health, millions of people have been helped by low-carb diets, also known as ketogenic diets. But for most people, it's hard to get the right balance of protein and nutrition needed to succeed, especially when on the go. That's why Longevity created Keto FX bars and shakes. They work together as a low-carb, high-protein
Okay.
to help you thrive on your low-carb diet. When you grab a Keto FX shake, you get 21 grams of high-quality whey protein with 0 net carbs. Our Keto FX bar gives you 18 grams of protein.
gotta
with
turn
only
this
1 gram of
one.
net carbs. And we didn't sacrifice
Get Mo.
flavor or function.
No luck?
No.
Let's have you keep trying.
Okay. Also gives you
I just texted him.
nutrients.
Yeah, he said leave a voicemail or text, and I left a voicemail, so.
Succeed on your low-carb diet. And it's
If
all
you'll
built
keep
on whole food
you'll keep trying to
plants,
reach out to him, I'll
That'll
just
work.
vegetables.
Okay.
I'll start the show and we'll bring him on as quick as we can. Okay?
For more information, or call 888-204-3304.
Deep down, we all know that freedom and liberty matter. This is where we discuss why they matter. This is Loving Liberty with Bryan Hyde.
Hello there and welcome to Loving Liberty. I'm Bryan Hyde. Glad to be back in the saddle. I actually had a really nice break. So I'll give you a very quick travelogue. Mo is in the process right now of getting Ammon Bundy on the phone with me. We do have an interview set up with Ammon. I know he's been making a very concerted outreach to various media outlets, looking to get some information out there regarding evidence that would show that the couple of the defendants, Greg Burleson and Todd Engel, in the Bunkerville trial, were not given a fair shake in court. I know those who attended all of the trials commented that in the trial of Ammon, his father, his brother Ryan, and Brian Payne, a lot more truth was presented to the jurors, and it just didn't happen in that very first trial. So anyway, I'm anxious to hear what Ammon has to say. But I want to give you just a real quick rundown. Last week I had the opportunity to run up to Yellowstone Park and then to Bill Cody Ranch, which is near Yellowstone Park, about 30 minutes outside the park. That's where my son, David, is working for the summer. And it was a remarkable experience in that there was no cell service, there was no Wi-Fi, there was no television. Now, I know for some people that's like, oh my goodness, it was like you were dropped into the Stone Age, and how did you possibly survive? But truth be told, it was actually one of the best experiences I've had in a long time. Part of it being that we were just able to focus on one another. I mean, look, I'm not a big card game player, but my family and I, we played card games. We ended up talking. We ended up sightseeing. We did have our phones, so we could take pictures of what we saw that was interesting. But I want to report to you all the angst and all of the crazy stuff that's going on, and all of the media-generated fury that seems to be just dominating our awareness these days, receded into the background, and the whole world started looking a lot more normal. Now, there's something else I noticed here too, and I'm not telling you, therefore, you should swear off media of all types forever and ever, but take a break once in a while and see if it doesn't change how you see yourself as well as how you see other people. Case in point, during our travels, we were able to visit with and interact with and even help a very wide variety of people. Some people from different countries, some people from just different walks of life. Some people who, just very clearly had a different slant on life than me. None of it mattered, though. Those differences didn't really matter because nobody was jockeying for this position of superiority or for, the ability to show you this is how wrong you are in your beliefs. We were all just there enjoying what nature had to offer and enjoying one another's company and learning from one another, and it was a very, very positive experience, even if it was for a very short time. So if you haven't taken a media fast in a while, I would highly recommend it just because it could totally change how you see yourself, more importantly, how you see others. At least it'll help you recalibrate. That's how I came back feeling. I believe I have Ammon Bundy on the line with me. Ammon, are you there?
Yes, Brian, I'm here.
Thank you, and kudos to Mo for making this connection. So I noticed when I did get back on social media, I noticed that you had posted a video making a request for members of the media to reach out to you, and so I thought, well, this sounds like as good an opportunity as any to get a hold of Ammon. Tell me what's behind this request, and what is the effort that you're putting forth right now?
Well, Brian, as you know, but maybe your listeners do not know, we have two individuals, Todd Engel and Greg Burleson, that are still in prison. And they were just like literally thousands of other people that came to the ranch in 2014. And because of the egregious actions in which they saw, they came. They were there for a short period of time, actually both of them less than 24 hours. They were there that day under the bridge on the 12th, and they did have their weapons, but they never brandished them or never pointed them at anybody or never did anything inappropriate with them. And now Greg Burleson has been convicted for assaulting a federal officer, and he was just sentenced for 68 years till the rest of his life. And Todd Engel was the same, and he's been awaiting sentence here on July 19th. And both of them, Brian, were in a trial together with four other men, and in that trial, they were not allowed under the force of the court. They were not allowed to present to the jury the reasons why they came to the Bundy Ranch, and so I can't sit around and just allow these men to be sentenced for the rest of their lives when they came to the ranch for the right reason and to protect us and to defend us against, a very serious, overreaching federal government that sent the military upon us, began to kill our cattle, destroy our water infrastructure, abuse us, and threaten our lives multiple times.
Ammon, let me ask you this. I was able to attend your trial, and I was astonished, based on reports of what I had heard from the earlier trials, at how much truth was brought into the light of day in the course of your trial. Ultimately, I believe that's the reason that you and your family members are now free men. What was it that kept that truth out of the trial? You mentioned the court was very, very strict and very rigid in how that trial was conducted earlier. Do you have any insights you can offer? Why was the truth able to come out in your trial, but was prevented from being spoken in the earlier trial?
So to give just a little bit of background, so there was 2 trials in Nevada. There was actually, 3 trials. There was the first trial where Todd Engel, Greg Burleson, Eric Parker, Steven and Ricky Lovely and Scott Drexler were all in that trial. And 4 of them were found where it was a hung jury. And Todd and Greg were convicted on like 2 of the charges, and there was like 19 charges. And then there was a second trial, and it was hung again on just the 4 of them. It was a hung trial, you know, so obviously they didn't have, the prosecution did not have a very good, you know, conviction, or they didn't have a very good evidence that what they did was you know, that they were guilty, excuse me. Then the third trial was us, meaning my father, my brother, myself, and Ryan Payne. And Pete Santilli was supposed to be in it as well. And we, during our trial, because of the thousands of hours that we spent going through the discovery, we knew of this conspiracy and the cover-up and the snipers on the hills and everything, you know, everything that was going on. And we had good, you know, we were organized and had the evidence to present. And we basically continued to push and push and push, and had attorneys that would push until that truth was revealed. And what I mean by that specifically is snipers on the hills. And if you want, I could give you a little better example. I'm not articulating very well.
That's okay. We've got a break here in about 30 seconds, but we'll come back and we can pick up there. The main thing I want people to understand is that the truth is what set you guys free. And as that truth came out, it became very clear for bystanders and onlookers that the truth was never given a chance to be presented in that earlier trial. And when we come back, Ammon, there's a couple things I want to ask you about. We'll talk a little bit about what needs to happen and why you are making this effort to reach out to the media. And hopefully we'll get some of our listeners and viewers involved here to where they can help get the truth out there as well. Ammon Bundy is my guest. This is Loving Liberty, and we'll be back right after this.
The sun's finally out, so get out there and enjoy. And don't forget to bring along the refreshing sound of K-Talk Media, 1640 AM.
Has your healthcare become too much of a burden? If so, there is a way out. Open enrollment is
All right.
here.
I'm assuming that our viewers on Loving Liberty's Facebook feed are getting good, clear audio. But I don't know if somebody has tinkered here in the radio studio, but somebody was telling me that they weren't getting audio on the Who's Next feed, which is being taken from the K-Talk feed. So drop me a message or shoot me a quick comment here to let me know if you're not getting audio, and I'll get somebody in here to look at it. But there's a bunch of moving parts here, and if somebody touches one thing, it can kind of set everything else off. All right. That, or I forgot everything I knew about how to run this thing in the few days that I was out of the studio. So it's a possibility. I'm not as young as I used to be, and this can be complicated.
These are those cases that arise just by living life, buying a home, rental agreements, power of attorneys, and traffic and DUI matters. We have 5 offices in Orem, Ogden, Salt Lake City, Sandy, and Spanish Fork. Visit us at peacelegal.net. That's PEACELEGAL.net, or call us at 801-876-LAWS. That's 801-876-5297. Our consultations are free, and we will always work hard for you. Peace Legal, we're a refreshingly different type of law firm. My name is Garrett Smith, and I'm an attorney with Peace Legal Law Firm. Divorce is a very difficult time for everyone involved. Emotional, mental, and financial pressure. A divorce can be overwhelming. why we've designed our firm to take away some of those pressures. We offer flat fee billing so you won't have to worry about writing a check each time you want to update your lawyer about your case. No hidden costs, one flat fee. We also understand that you'll have a lot of questions. We won't rush you or talk down to you. You deserve better. You can reach us at peacelegal.net. That's PEACELEGAL.net, or call us at 801-876-LOGS. That's 801-876.
Mike sounds fine now.
Is it doing okay?
Such a weird
Somebody
sound.
had commented on K-Talk's feed that there was no audio. So
The guy that I talked to said, like, I could hear it, and I could hear you just, like, it seemed like you were on the other side of the room, but, like, right now, perfectly normal. I have no idea. I'm not a tech guy, but...
I don't know, man. It's...
No, you sound good, though, now, so I wouldn't worry about it, but, I mean, if it does it again, I might ask them, like, do you know what's going on, but...
It makes a fantastic fundraiser activity.
My fault.
Okay. Sure. Thank you so much for joining us for Loving Liberty. Ammon Bundy is my guest by telephone. Ammon has recently issued a plea for media outlets to contact him. And Ammon, the stated purpose for this is to see about actual, authentic justice being done for Todd Engel and also for Greg Burleson, who you were saying were denied the opportunity for a really fair trial. Tell me what the ultimate goal is in terms of reaching out to the media. What do you want to see happen?
I'm hoping that the jury in their trial will come forth and we'll be able to show them the evidence that was not presented to them, that was actually not allowed to be presented to them. And that they will begin to speak out and say, if we had seen this evidence, our decision would have been different. These men are innocent men, that they did what was right. They came for the right reasons, and we were not able to see that in trial. The evidence was withheld from us. And let me just give you some examples, Brian, of evidence that the jury did not get to see. For example, the militarization of the BLM and the federal agents there. So let me just give you a little list. So basically they came in and they set up what's called an incident command post. So it was like a military base. In fact, it was said multiple times by reporters that it looks like a military type base. And then if we go into the operation plan on page 7, in their own operation plan, it says the operation will be under the incident command system. This system is based directly off the military model. And so basically they sent a military type force upon an American family, and the jury was never allowed to see that. Now, kind of give you a list. The ICP was equipped with command facilities, communication towers, light tower snipers, sniper posts, MRAMs, barricades, gate guards, tents, helicopters with specialized equipment, and canine units. That's just to mention a few. And then in April 7th, the incident report from their own incident report shows that the operation was up to 213 personnel, 140 personnel with tactical gear and training, 51 support staff, and 19 contractors. And that doesn't include the FBI units that they hid from both trials and that we discovered in the third trial. That was all hidden, exculpatory evidence. And then many of the federal agents were outfitted with armored vests, helmets, and tactical fatigue, fully and semi-automatic AR rifles, assault rifles, with short barrels, which are not legal for the public, grenade launchers, range finders, and ammunition belts. And during the operation, specific training was taking place right there on the ramp. And these trainings were combat recovery training, CRT, canine attack training, specifically for the Bundy protesters, equine familiarization training, EFT, how to subdue a man on a horse, eminent force tactical training, EFTTPs, Some of the militarized equipment identified in the discovery are 4 helicopters. In total, at least one was equipped with FLIR and other specialized equipment. At least one was equipped with a gunman on board, mine-resistant armored vehicles, portable communication vehicles. I'm just going on. Powerful listening devices, high elevation target support with infrared and night vision technology. And when we go through those videos, we see that this equipment must have been equipped with something that could be armed, because the discovery shows that it was disarmed, at least while the crosshairs were trained on the protesters in the Bundy home. So that the jury never got to see that. Another thing that the jury did not get to see or hear was the despicable acts by federal agents. And I'd like to, if I got time, I'd like to go through a little bit of that, Brian.
Yeah, we've got about 4 minutes. Go for it.
Okay, so the discovery is full of despicable acts of lower-level federal agents in their desire to cause harm, basically to the protesters. And while federal agents pointed guns at men, women, and children protesting the violent action of BLM, in the body cam and dash cams caught on audio, the video caught federal agents on April 12th saying such things as, "Mother effer, you come find me and you will have hell to pay," or "This is a shoot first and ask questions later situation." And one BLM agent, speaking of a man with a dog among the people, said, "Shoot the effing dog first." And then another BLM agent, speaking of an overweight woman, said, "Shoot her right in the effing forehead." Then several agents laughed together about the comment. And it's all on video, and the jury didn't get to hear this. And then again, after Chief Deputy Tom Roberts de-escalated the situation and backed the federal agents down, you see and hear federal agents talking. And one says, "We should have sent units up there and smashed them, killed them. If we kill them, great." Another agent is so disappointed in the de-escalation by the sheriff's department that he says, "Not one shot fired, all just effing mouth."
Wow.
These are just a few examples that the jury did not get to hear in the Todd Engel and Greg Burleson, and that's I'm certain that if the jury would have heard that, that would have impacted them.
Ammon, I have a question for you. Did you get a chance to talk to the jury members who sat on your jury after the charges were dismissed?
Yes.
Tell our audience a little bit about what you learned from those jurors. What did they communicate to you?
Well, as soon as the case was dismissed, which you have to understand that we were only 3.5 witnesses into the government witness list, and they had like 46 witnesses. So the trial had just begun. And when we spoke to the jurors when it was dismissed, and I didn't speak to every one of them, but I spoke to most of them, they said if they were to deliberate at this moment, they would have found us not guilty. They were actually appalled. And I'll give you an example. There was a black man, there was 3 black men that sat on the jury. And our attorneys were a little worried that they might be, a little offended by us and so forth, just the attorneys. Well, when Ryan got up and testified and said that this is much like the civil rights movement, and we're only trying to defend our rights just like they were, our attorneys got scared that we would have offended the black members of the jury. Well, when they allowed us to talk to the jury members, one of the black men came right over there and gave Ryan, my brother, a big hug and said, "Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. I'm so grateful for you. I appreciate everything you've done." And he was one of those that said, for sure, if we were to deliberate right now, you would be found not guilty.
Wow. Ammon, we're down to about a minute here. What are some concrete steps that our listeners or our viewers can take to help you in getting this word out?
Well, they say the Colt revolver made all men equal. And I believe that that social media has made all politics equal. And so I'm asking to use the social media, especially in the southern Utah, southern Nevada area, and try to reach out to these jurors and give them strength to come forth, because they're probably going to be threatened. but I've already, it's completely legal what I'm doing, Bryan. I've already asked the attorneys if I could reach out to the jurors if there's anything illegal about it, and there's not. And I'm asking these jurors to come forth and so I can show them this evidence, and so that they can determine publicly and basically expose publicly that their decision would have been different.
Okay, Ammon Bundy, thank you so much for your efforts. You know you're always welcome on this program at any time, and I will encourage people likewise follow your Facebook page, and let's talk again soon.
Yeah, so anybody who has put on there that to contact me by my email, which is AmmonEdwardBundy@gmail.com.
Got it. Ammon, thank you so much. We'll be back on Loving Liberty after this.
When the weather's hot outside, cool off with a splash of K-Talk Media, 1640 AM. Oh yeah, now that's refreshing.
My name is Allison Johnson, and I'm an attorney with Peace Legal Law.
All right.
One of the reasons I became an attorney was to help couples with adoptions, and I am passionate about the legal work I do. Some adoptions are relatively straightforward, while others can be very complex.
What is up with the K-Talk audio?
In the process of adopting or have adoption-related questions, please don't hesitate to call. Consultations are free.
I still got more comments that there was no audio here.
Really?
Yeah.
Sounds like really good from my end.
Allison Johnson. That's 801-876-5297. Our website is peacelegal.net.
Yeah, as long as those needles are moving, we should be okay, right?
Peace Legal.
Somebody, I think, has changed some stuff in here, and I don't know what.
Law firms charge clients by the minute. Sometimes you're afraid to call your lawyer because you're worried about the cost. Not with Peace Legal. You have the option in most cases between hourly billing and flat fee billing. With flat fee billing, you know how much your case will cost up front. One flat fee, no hidden costs, and no charges to speak with your lawyer.
That is frustrating.
Adoptions, divorce, prenuptial agreements, and enforcement of custody and support orders. We also work with businesses and nonprofits, with planning, contracts, and employment issues. We also handle what we call life law matters. These are those cases that arise just by living life, buying a home, rental agreements, power of attorneys, and traffic and DUI matters. We have 5 offices in Orem, Ogden, Salt Lake City, Sandy, and Spanish Fork. Visit us at peacelegal.net. That's PEACELEGAL.net, or call us at 801-876-LAWS. That's 801-876-5297. Our consultations are free, and we will always work hard for you. Peace Legal, we're a refreshingly different type of law firm.
Hey, this is Stan Ellsworth. Believe it or not, I wrote a book. Yeah, man, it's about the heroes of the American Revolution. Kind of like the motorcycle culture, same mindset and all. You can get yours on Amazon today. So, man, get your Patriot on. Let your spirit of 76 shine loud and proud, baby. Get you some. Renegades and Rebels.
I'll bet that was fun, having Stan in here.
It was interesting. It was different, you know, because I was like, I'd give him the countdown. There's like 5 seconds left, and he's like done talking, and I'm like, oh my god, like, I just caught it up and like waiting for it to kick on. But I would give him the countdown, and he's just like, yep. And he would try to like keep talking, but he would just run out of things to say. So we'd have like, and some of them, like 4 or 5 seconds of silence before the bumper music would come on. But because I would do the transitions of the bumper music when we were coming back, but we'd always go out to your music and Joe's, maybe with the exception of once. But yeah, it was interesting.
Freedom to direct your healthcare, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people.
This K-Talk feed is problematic.
And take back the control of your healthcare while helping those around. Call us at 855-58-LIBERTY.
That's why I'm glad I have a backup feed through Loving Liberty to make it happen.
It was like you were coming in really clear this last hour, or last segment, so I don't know what's going on. At least from over there.
Welcome back to Loving Liberty. I'm Bryan Hyde. Mo is screening your calls at 801-254-1640. So I would feel that I was being remiss if I didn't invite you to the grand opening of Liberty Hall. We conveniently scheduled this on the July 4th holiday. Plenty of chance to celebrate freedom and friendship. And for those who don't know, Kathy Smith is the widow of Bert Smith. Bert Smith is a name that, well, let's just say Bert left some very deep tracks in a lot of the soil here in northern Utah. A guy who was not only a very successful rancher and businessman, Smith and Edwards, which a lot of people will remember driving by in northern Utah, great big, surplus and outdoor store. Bert was also a very tireless advocate for freedom and willing to do a lot of heavy lifting. And frankly, it's to his credit. Just like the American Revolution had people like Robert Morris who helped to bankroll, the efforts of the colonists to secure their independence from Great Britain. Bert has been very instrumental in funding a number of efforts to perpetuate liberty. And when I say this, I want you to understand we're not talking about Republican-flavored liberty. I'm talking about liberty for everybody. That's how you know it's the authentic article, is it has to be for everyone. It can't just be a partisan consideration. And so Bert's vision and Bert's efforts, I think he lived to 96 years of age, and he did a lot of good throughout his life. His legacy is that the cause of liberty is continuing to be upheld and promoted, and through Loving Liberty, which is, of course, the namesake of this show, and also one of the great groups behind Liberty Hall. Now you have a chance to come to Liberty Hall, which will be a place of gathering, learning, and the celebration of liberty, because it requires that every generation do their part. It's liberty it's not just a great idea. We talk about it, yeah, it's fine, woo, liberty. Probably the best example is to talk to people who've lived where liberty wasn't available to them, or where it wasn't an option. And maybe then we can start to appreciate just how rare it is throughout human history that there have been people who have enjoyed a lasting sense of liberty. And by the way, by liberty, just for the sake of a definition, so we're more or less on the same page here. I'm not just talking about the freedom to do whatever you want. That's it may seem like to some people that's what they've been programmed to think of liberty as. Oh yeah, that's just anarchy, no rules, no laws whatsoever. No, liberty is something much more divinely connected. Meaning it's the ability to act without outward coercion, to freely choose your course. Or I think the best definition I've heard that I like, liberty is the ability to do what you ought to be doing. Not because some politician says this is what you need to do, but because it's what makes you the happiest, or it's what brings you closer to your purpose in life. And you look around right now, there are very few things in our lives that are not regulated or subject to the approval of this bureaucrat or this law or this politician, or they're taxed, which are all forms of the same thing. Someone is exerting control or exerting influence over even the most minute decisions that you and I can make. Ideally, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness were the ideals that the colonists separated themselves from Great Britain in order that they might more fully pursue those things. In fact, they cast off their existing system of government, those extremists, and they instituted a new system better suited and more responsive to what they actually wanted. If you ever want to try a very interesting experiment, get your hands on a copy of The Great Books of Western Civilization. This was published by the University of Chicago and Encyclopedia Britannica, clear back in 1952. So it's been around for a long time, but we're talking 3,000 years of human history and discussion, this great conversation that has gone on throughout the ages. And there are two books which take a number of the topics that are covered throughout those 3,000 years of Western thought. And we're talking everything from history to philosophy to politics to ethics to science, poetry. It covers so many different aspects. But there are two volumes which are known as the Syntopicon. And the Syntopicon will take subjects like love, or family, or slavery, or freedom. And it will cross-reference every single one of those times when that subject is mentioned throughout those great works of Western civilization. Now, keeping in mind, I'm talking about the 54-volume set. That's a pretty big body of knowledge. But the researchers and the compilers of that set exhaustively cross-referenced it, and it's fascinating to see not only how consistently the same topics come up over and over throughout human history, but how many of the same questions that they struggled with, we still struggle with in our time. The names and faces change, but human nature has been remarkably consistent. And although freedom has been a reality for a very small minority of people, at least authentic freedom, throughout much of human history, it has been on people's minds from the very beginning. We're blessed to live in a time where we've enjoyed more of it than most of humanity has, which makes it all the more tragic, the idea that we would willingly walk away from it, or for that matter trade it off for something that we perceive to be better than freedom in the form of security, whether that's, the security of someone providing for me, or making my fears go away, or controlling my neighbor because I don't like that he does, he works on cars in his front yard, or whatever it may be. The founders said no to big government. Richard Ebeling, who writes for the Foundation for Economic actually he writes for the Future of Freedom Foundation, and I have a piece here that was published on the Foundation of Economic Education's website. They said no to big government. And he's talking about the Declaration of Independence. He's talking about the very reason you and I are going to be celebrating 2 days from now. And sums it up by saying the Founding Fathers insisted that each man should be considered as owning himself and not viewed as property of the state. So I'm going to throw a question to Mo here. Mo, my faithful producer and sounding board.
Hit me.
Do you feel like you own yourself, or do you feel like there are places where government, at some level, is claiming ownership of you, your life, the sweat of your brow, whatever it may be?
Honestly, no. Maybe with taxation, but in my day-to-day though, I don't feel like they interfere with my life all that much, so long as I'm being a good person, or maybe not even a good person, but I'm just staying out of trouble. Then I don't think I don't feel their presence in my life very much.
Interesting. I'm going to put that same question to our listeners. 801-254-1640. I'm not asking, hey, you got an axe to grind? Come on, I got the wheel turning here. But I think that, Mo, you have hit on something that would probably relate to a lot of people. Well, I don't really feel it that much. And what I'm going to suggest is that's because a lot of those, we'll take taxes, for instance, are hidden. When's the last time you read the fine print on your cell phone bill?
I don't. Never have, never will. As long as the bill is the same each month, then I pretty much just pay it.
Okay, I don't want to sow the seeds of discontent, but I would encourage you to take a look at it and marvel at how many different ways government has reached its hand into what you're paying for that monthly cell phone coverage. Right. And here's the interesting part. They won't call it a tax. It's a fee, but it serves the same purpose as a tax in that it's directing money into the coffers of government.
I also think, of course, I just mean in my day-to-day, I don't really feel like their presence, but of course it's there in regulations, right? Even state run liquor stores, or
Ooh, there's
there you go. I guess
that's a hot one.
That's one that I guess I don't struggle with, but it's just kind of the way it was ever since I was in that position. So I don't really have a bone to pick with it, because it's all I know in that sense.
Can you work anywhere that you would like to?
If I get the job, right? If I'm hired, then I can.
Can you do it without government permission?
No.
Nope. No. Nope. Some cases it'll be in the form of licensure. Sometimes it's just simply, we need you to prove your residency to us, that you legitimately live in America.
Background check, drug tests.
That your income can be tracked and taxed. Anyways, I don't want to beat the dead horse here, but we'll be back on Loving Liberty right after this.
just funny though, because I didn't have to do any of that for this job. You know, like he didn't ask me to do a background check, a drug test, or even submit any IDs. Well, maybe he did. Actually, IDs he probably did. I just forgot about it. I don't recall, but I bet he had to. So.
I think people would be shocked if they recognized how much, just in terms of taxes. Connor Boyack and I interviewed an author earlier today, Kristen Tate. Yeah, she wrote a book called "Taxing Us to Death," or how they're taxing us to. And the hidden taxes you can't believe, and it's your utility bills. It's not just the federal government; it's every level of government. I got to renew my concealed carry permit. It's a tax.
How long does it go?
5 years.
Okay, I was like, at least. I mean, at first I'm like, I don't know, so I thought it was like annually for a sec, but like,
nope.
It's not too bad, I guess.
No,
but,
and it's not terribly expensive, and I can actually do it online. But that's a God-given right to self-defense that's been converted into a privilege for which I will pay a tax to the state in return for its permission.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't say anything about permits, carry permits or concealed carry permits with the Second Amendment, right?
Nope. Unless you were a criminal who was locked away from society or otherwise adjudicated unfit,
then you would have to get a permit?
Then it was it was nobody's business. The state had no reason to prevent you from bearing arms for your own defense.
No, it is a different time, though.
If you, this is a hot one. This is going to the ballot this November in Utah. If your kid has epilepsy,
Like he can get the
CBD oil or medical cannabis.
FDA,
you can't have that.
The FDA just approved something, cannabis infused. I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
but
it
is for epilepsy. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
That's good though. It's a step, but.
But should they have ever exercised that preemptive denial of that right in the first place? My heart says no.
Oh no, but I mean with the history of the country and how it was so like, I don't know who, not Nancy Reagan, but like there was that big thing against marijuana. And now we're moving more towards it, but like.
Well, Nancy Reagan was a big one. Just say no.
Just say no. Just say no. And everyone.
Which I always thought was kind of rude. Say no thanks.
Just say no.
And beware, because there's guys who are really tricky in how they'll ask you, hey, would you mind sharing this joint with me? No.
Why would I mind?
Nancy said no. I've said to say no, so would it bother you if I drew out a line of coke to have you snort with me? No. I'm just saying no to drugs.
Oh man, no, it is kind of. I mean, I don't know if I echo your sentiments completely, but it is kind of annoying when like some legislation passed and we're like, what a victory, our system's working and all this, but in your mind it's like we don't need their permission, or we shouldn't have to ask their permission for everything.
Yep.
But we do. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. You'll see the legislation pass and you're like, we did something right.
All right, here we go. Welcome back to Loving Liberty. I'm Bryan Hyde. Mo is my producer, taking your calls at 801-254-1640. I want to refer back to this commentary by Richard Ebling. This was from a couple of years ago, and it was, speaking of just say no, the founders just said no to big government. And that's what the Declaration was about. It wasn't about, hey, let's get rid of the king's big government so we can create our own big government to tell us what to do. It was about the concentration of power and arbitrary rule that the British Crown was using to make their lives miserable. And by miserable, I mean they were taxed at 1 or 2%.
Oh man.
Yeah, compared to us today, where we're taxed
25.
at.
Yeah, well, I mean, Canada I think is about 25-30%, and we're at, I think on average, what, like 15-20?
Actually, on average, we're at about 33%.
Get out of here.
When you combine
high brackets or higher brackets?
No, that's on average. Higher tax brackets can take you even further than that.
You're kidding me.
No. Yeah, between state and federal taxes, you're looking at about a third of your income that is claimed by the government.
Why don't we have universal health care?
I'm just kidding, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. Actually, there's another topic for another time. 801-254-1640. So you have to remember the original reason for Independence Day. At every turn, says Richard Eberling, the British Crown concentrated political power and decision-making power in its own hands, which left the American colonists with little ability to manage their own affairs through local and state governments. Laws and rules were imposed without the consent of the governed. Laws and procedures meant to limit abusive or arbitrary government were either ignored or were abrogated. So that was a big challenge for them. And I don't know if you ever feel like, I don't know, that there's arbitrary laws or arbitrary decision-making that's being imposed on you, but I definitely get that sense. I don't have a sense that those who hold power, sometimes at the federal level, sometimes at the state level, sometimes even at the local level, are necessarily looking out for our interests so much as they're looking out for their own. Might be something to consider. I'm not saying we need a popular uprising, but it might do us well to remember that that was one of the foundational reasons why the founders said enough and withdrew their consent. There's a moral principle at stake here. My goal here is to lead you to it, but I can't make you see it. That's something you're going to have to do on your own. Let's go to the phone. Arthur, welcome to Loving Liberty.
Yes, the government just has too much low-hanging fruit to pick from, because as I understand it, every one of us commits a couple felonies every day, one way or another. There's just too much for them to choose from if they want to get after you for whatever reason. That say Hillary doesn't like your the way you think about something, or Obama doesn't like the way you're protesting something, and there's just too much that they can do, and I like that idea of what Trump has is, for every law that you pass, you got to get rid of two. And
that would be a nice start. I would love to see it.
You've got to get the right type of laws that you're going to get rid of. There's moral laws that, where thou shalt not kill or steal. Everybody understands that. But when it comes to the weeds, there's a law against that. Because of this, people have done this, or people have done that. It gets too confusing for the layman. In fact, right now it gets too confusing for the lawyers that just do the laws. And the Federal Register is growing all the time.
Well, and here's one of the byproducts of all of those laws. And I will use the word incomprehensible, because I think that accurately describes not just the U.S. code annotated, but it describes the entire body of law from federal right down to the local level. There are so many laws and regulations on the book, nobody, not even a judge, can say with absolute certainty that they know every law that's on the books, because it's constantly in a state of flux. It's being changed and added to and taken from. And it's complicated, and it works in the government's favor to where if they want to rein somebody in, they can always find something.
Right, that's what I'm talking about. That they just got you by the.
I get the picture.
Shorts.
Yeah, I get the picture. And this is the same thing that the colonists were going through, by the way, too. And Arthur, thank you for your call. They complained, if you read in the Declaration of Independence, they talk about how the taxes were burdensome. They were very creative at smuggling and trying to avoid some of the king's taxes. But the king, in response, with harsher laws and harsher enforcement, sent his troops out there, and they became more violent. The Redcoats were the police of that day. The king's army and navy killed civilians. They wantonly ruined people's private property. The Declaration says he has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. And so they declared their independence. They withdrew their consent, and they opposed oppressive government. And by the way, is our government getting more or less violent towards us?
I don't want to paint with a broad brush. What do you think?
I would say without a doubt.
Can you give me an example?
Well, sure. Just watched
other than the Bundy stuff.
Just watched a video earlier today of a guy, I think it was in Pennsylvania, sitting on the curb, being, he's got a cop standing there pointing a taser at him, and the guy's telling him, stretch your legs out straight and cross your feet.
I saw that.
Okay? And he's not fast enough.
Yeah, no, I saw that video.
He's not. It's not like he's getting ready to fight, but he's not obeying quickly enough, and they zapped him.
Yep.
And that is the enforcement mentality versus the peace officer mentality that for years was the standard for policing. And so whatever it is you're violating, it's the gotcha mentality that's being trained into a lot of these new officers that are being put out on the streets. It's very disturbing. And the state, I don't know a nice way to say this. Here's my broad brush. The state is organized violence. And the police are the mechanism by which its organized violence is put to work.
I was going to say that's a bold phrasing, I would say.
It is. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't do some good things, and sometimes they do. But the point is, if the state says, well, this is a regulation, this is a rule, this is a law, violence is the only thing it has at its disposal to make you do it.
Right. I mean,
it's not limited to persuasion like everybody else, like church, like academia, like family, like community, like media, like business.
All of us, we have to convince each other in a peaceful manner.
We have to persuade. The state says, no, we can force you, and it does.
Oh, you're making it sound like the police are the government's SS.
Well, they are. What did the SS do? They enforced. They were the enforcers. And I know it's unfair to say, well, and therefore our police are just like the SS. Not in the sense that they're rounding people up and putting them into camps, but the reflexive going to violence or going to the taser when someone has irritated you, or you need to flex your authority. It seems to be happening a lot, and
I'm sure we don't want to badmouth officers, because you and I would be very quick to call them, maybe not very quick, but like if you were in a medical or some kind of thing, you'd call them.
Let me put it this way though. I've had a number of friends in law enforcement over the last 20 some years.
And they all agree with you.
A lot of them are leaving law enforcement. And they're leaving it because they see a transition that's taking place that is causing them concern, and the concern it's causing them is they believe that it's easier to be part of the problem than to be part of the solution, and these are not radicalized guys. These are very sober individuals.
Shout out Eric Mutzos.
Yeah, they understand that there comes a point where you can't do bad things and still be a good man, and I'm not saying that this is where our government is today, where we can compare it, apples for apples with what the Nazis did. That's a lazy way to do it. But the direction it's moving is definitely much more authoritarian, and the only place to go after authoritarian is totalitarian. And I'll just say this for the sake of consideration. The Nazis didn't get there overnight. They didn't get there in one fell swoop. Little by little, incrementally, the distance between the government and the people increased. And by the time most people realized what was going on, it was too dangerous to speak out. So, at the risk of offending people, I'm going to speak out now while it's still safe to do so.
What do we do, Brian?
Know your liberty. Seriously. Know it.
It's harder when a cop's got a gun in your face, right?
Can be. See you tomorrow on Loving Liberty.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I don't want to unfairly portray them either, but